Okay, here we are. This is Trey Jedla with Fox and No, and we are going to have a conversation regarding meta-narrative as it relates to coherence in society. We had a little discussion. Um, you know what? We had a
Yeah,
discussion in
I think you might not need to say that bit again, Trey. I'm not. I think yeah, the live button came up after you'd started. I'll be sorry, yeah, after you'd started talking, so you might need to say it again.
oh, well, it said it was okay here.
All right, that might just be at my end. That's fine.
Yeah, I think
Carry
yours
on.
is probably a little behind mine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we had a conversation um, regarding meta-narrative, and it was regarding uh, raising of wages, mandatory raising of wages, I think to $15 in Seattle. And the article I posted said that it's caused a lot of restaurants to close. Anyway, and my beef is that it's not really anything about a living wage or anything so much as it is about having a meta-narrative. And Fox thinks that the whole idea of a meta-narrative is a misnomer so far as importance goes. I'm trying to find that particular thread. So what I want to ask you, Fox, first of all, what do you think of when you think of like a meta-narrative? What do you think I'm talking about?
Do you mean something that's an overarching theme or aim or purpose?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
To what? Everything? History?
yeah,
Politics?
yeah, in a very utilitarian sense regarding society, I guess is what I'm looking for here. I finally found it.
Okay. Why?
Uh,
Why in a utilitarian sense?
well, in other words, the utility of having a meta-narrative. Again, you think this idea is silly, and I'm saying it's a very foundation for philosophy to say that there must be some sort of a matrix that brings unity out of diversity in society, and that's what a meta-narrative does. And
Why is unity better or preferable to disunity or diversity?
well, no, I'm all for diversity. I love diversity. I think it's a wonderful thing,
Okay.
but it must be brought together into some sort of coherence, or all you have is, by definition, you have disintegration. You could use the
Well,
analogy of, let me use an analogy of a sports team, okay? You say you've got a diversity of players, and they do not have a same, if you will, meta-narrative to play, let's play soccer or football.
mm,
They are going to be chaotic. That's what the coach's job. The coach is more of an instrumental, but the material of a cause of the soccer game is going to be the plan that they have to do it. And in a sense, is a meta narrative, and we got to have that for society. If you have everybody going every which way they want to, and they have no common goal whatsoever that's rationally coherent, you will have disintegration in society. Only
mm.
recently do we think we've risen above such a thing. And to me, it's laughable. There's no way. You can't. You can't. You got to have some
Well,
kind of common core.
I would object that you obviously you don't because I mean if you're saying we no longer have a persistent meta narrative and things have not clearly not disintegrated because there are over 7 billion people living long and relatively happy lives compared to previous eras. So I just find that patently absurd. And also say I think I'm just recalling what you said. Sorry, I'm a bit tired because I've been to work. But I think you said something along the lines of, well, I think you were kind of getting at a false dichotomy of either we have a meta narrative or we can't have a plurality of narratives, which we all kind of strive to. Some of us tend to subscribe to it, others not. And the freedom to reject a meta narrative, I would say, is a progressive thing to have and a good thing to have. So,
Okay, but I mean, and this is the thing I don't understand, that you have an undergraduate degree in philosophy and you never learned that the fundamental question of Western philosophy has been, how do you make unity out of
well,
diversity? How do you make coherence out of chaos?
I would say, Trey, that you need to be careful with this because a fundamental question, okay, maybe that you mean a persistent question. I wouldn't say there is any one fundamental question in philosophy. It's such a wide range of areas. So, I mean, the idea that unity, I mean, coherence is obviously is something different to unity. Coherence is being able to make sense of something, even if
Right, to
that
unify.
shows a diversity of positions, not necessarily to unify. I wouldn't say that. I mean, what we've seen, no, what I've just said, no, it isn't, Craig. Coherence is something that makes sense. It isn't something that's unified, is it?
It's something that takes the bits of information and coheres them into a unity. Oh my goodness, this is ridiculous.
I mean, we're going off down.
Do you know what the word university means? Do you know what two words bring up?
Trey, can you stop insulting me and let me finish a point? Okay. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't know what a university actually does. But I would also contend your point. Philosophy is probably diversified more in the last 100 years than it has ever been in its. Why it's what? Sorry.
It's generally useless. That's why. Because it cannot bring coherence.
It's again, that's just you're begging the question. You're assuming that that's the purpose of it, and I'm saying no. I'm saying philosophy is diversified and probably is better for it. And as for the utility of philosophy, again, that's not necessarily the purpose of philosophy. If something is to clarify, if the purpose of philosophy is clarity, and I'm not saying it necessarily is, but clarity could well bring about an awareness of disunity and a lack of uniformity in a lot of what we think or we used to think was the case. I mean, that's been the case in science, and philosophy's probably followed science's lead in that. But if it gives us
science is to bring unity out of diversity. That's why we do science.
Well, as I say, it's not the whole purpose. The whole purpose of science is to reflect reality, and I would say there is a. We would prefer to have a singular theory that could unite everything, but we won't necessarily get that if nature will give it to us.
That's right.
Similarly, quantum mechanics probably isn't the most unified or coherent field, and that's where the science is going.
And it's a problem, right?
No, it's not. It's only a problem if you cling to the idea that everything has to be unified and unity is preferable. But
then why do it? Then why search it out?
Because you are getting a better understanding of how reality actually is, and why isn't that a preferable thing?
Right?
Yeah, well, that is, but that isn't necessarily going to give you a picture which is unified. It might lead you to have more questions than answers. Chaos may, at some fundamental level, rule. That's very hard for us to get our heads around, and it might not be a good thing for us to think about, but it could just be the way nature is. I mean, nature doesn't give a crap really about unity out of diversity. I mean, the question of the one and the many is a very old question in philosophy. It may be that there isn't any kind of singular unifying meta-narrative or singular unifying substance or purpose to reality or the universe anyway. That could just be the case, and we might prefer one option or the other, and you would tend to disregard anything which goes against what you would prefer. I would say, well, let's follow where the information leads us. Where after thinking about things, where do our philosophical theories and developments lead us? And I think that in science and in philosophy, it's tended to be a growing disunity and a lack of consensus in which theory is to be preferred over the other one.
So
I think if you
why
study,
are people doing science today?
Because, as I've just said to you, Trey, if you can find out from reality that in some sense it is a very bizarre and strange and alien thing, that in and of itself is a wonderful thing to know. I mean, you don't just do science because you hope you get a good answer. That's not science at all.
You hope that you get a coherent answer, right?
You hope you get a sensible answer, but by coherence, Trey, as I've said before, I don't mean something which comes together to a singular, all-encompassing explanation. We might
That's
like
what
that.
coherence is, my friend.
No, coherence is
coherence
is the ability to make sense of something.
That's right. Take all the bits together and bring them into a coherent...
No, Trey. You don't bring all of the things together to force them to some preconceived desire to have things unified. You go where the thinking and where the information that you get leads you. That's where you go. You don't go just because, we need all of these things to kind of be cobbled together, so we're just going to cobble them together because we need something that's unified. As I said,
That's not what I'm saying.
if reality and human nature and the development of human society becomes more complex and differential as it develops, and as our understanding of reality develops, that's no bad thing, I don't think. And also, it doesn't matter whether or not we think it's good or bad. That's just how things are, possibly.
I'm not talking about complexity. You're saying the glories of complexity, and I'm saying so am I.
I'm talking about in terms of our ability to understand, I think, ability to grasp reality and hope that it has some unified sense to it. It may not. And it may not be that there is one de facto way of understanding. I mean, in philosophy, you know, thinking about things like the special composition question, you know, is an object really an object, or is it just a sum of simples organized in such a way that it appears to be an object? There isn't any way to kind of know either way, some would say. So that's a complex debate, and there's no unity that comes out of that. There's no way we can say one way or the other, if we're being totally honest. So if you understand philosophy and you don't just do what unfortunately a lot of theologians do, is they take a venture into philosophy and they'll take from it the resources that they want to support their pre-existing worldview. That's
Don't you lecture me about knowing philosophy, man, please.
Well, Trey, I'm not lecturing you. I'm giving you my opinion, okay? And as we've already established, and I don't want to pull rank because, as I've said to you in Hangouts before, it doesn't matter if you're an illiterate goat herder. If your arguments are good, your arguments are good.
Because I'm an illiterate goat herder.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, Trey. I've given you...
No, I am saying that. I'm not an educated guy, but I think that, again, I've said this before, Fox, you know a lot more than I do on these areas, but you have no idea how to bring those ideas into a workable whole. Again,
I don't have to bring ideas into a workable whole. That isn't...
That's what you're doing right now. That's why you're educating
me right now.
No, it isn't.
I'm not trying to bring everything into a workable whole, Trey. I'm not trying to force things together.
Are you saying your view is better than mine? More coherent than mine?
I'd say my view is better informed than yours, and it's more clarified.
That's right. It's clear, right? It's more unified, right?
It's not more unified. Again, with these false equivocations, Trey, you do this all the time. I know this is what you desperately want things to be this way, because then it's simple. Then things are simple, and you can grasp the simple explanation. Oh, it's just this is it. It might be incredibly complex, but there's a simple. It all comes back down to this simple idea of God. And I'm sorry, but it isn't that simple. It isn't that straightforward. If we want to do philosophy, we want to do science, we want to understand history and society and politics, we have to be able to accept that sometimes we're not going to have a single unified theory of everything. It's just not going to happen necessarily. If it did, well, that might be a nice thing, but if reality shows us that it isn't the case that we should really expect that, then we have to go with what reality says, don't we?
Well, that's true. Let me ask you this question. What is your goal in your skepticism?
My goal in my skepticism is to not believe things that I don't think warrant belief.
So you want to find truth, right?
Well, it depends what you mean by truth.
That which corresponds to reality.
Okay. Yeah, I could go along with it. I tend to generally adhere to truth maker theory.
So you're seeking for some kind of a matrix that makes sense about reality.
A matrix. Right? What do you mean by a matrix?
Just a framework. You're taking all these ideas and you listed the philosophy.
I'm not seeking a frame. I generally want to try to understand more of the world, and also my ignorance of it. I think that's a very beneficial thing that philosophy and science can do. They can sharpen our ignorance of things and show how often reality wants to go one way when we want it to go the other, and that's just too bad for us.
Well, you don't mean sharpen your ignorance. You mean expose your ignorance so that you can inform it, right?
No, because it may be that I can conceive of no way to inform, to dissolve my ignorance on a matter. I
so
think
you just give up?
No, not necessarily, but it may be. But I accept the possibility that I can't know something. I accept the possibility that there isn't a unified explanation. There isn't something which draws it all together.
Okay, if you accept something and are informing your ignorance, then you're not going to seek to inform that ignorance with anything other than the ignorance, right?
No, that doesn't follow at all, Trey. I'm not seeking out ignorance. I'm seeking out as much information and evidence as I can. If along the way it comes up to it becomes clear that there are certain things which I just can't know about, or there are things which are very difficult for me to understand in terms of things like quantum physics, wrapping my primate brain around how quantum mechanics works, or thinking of some of the developments in logic and in philosophy are very difficult for us to grasp, and they're not particularly intuitive to us. But then accepting the limits of my intuition in how they map to the world is again something which I find enlightening. That's what it comes down to, I guess, in many respects.
So your goal in skepticism is not skepticism, right?
Not the end isn't skepticism in of itself. Right. Skepticism is the tools by which I encounter claims about how reality is. Okay, it's how I approach. It's not how you approach things, because you have a preconceived idea of that reality should be unified and it should have some purpose behind it.
You just want to.
No, I don't.
You're saying that you never give up to find unity.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that I would prefer to find unity over diversity. I'm not saying that at all.
Well, you're not saying that, but that's what you do.
No, it isn't. It isn't. If reality, or some aspect of reality, throws up two or three explanations about phenomenon, and there's no way of knowing which one's which. If that's what I have to accept, that one or two or three of these theories. Say for instance, things like approaches towards understanding gravity. There's I think, and I'm not very good at my physics here, but I think obviously like quantum loop gravity. There's brain theory, M theory. There's probably physicists who turn that to. It may be that we never really have a way to settle some of these fundamental facts, but I would rather get to that position where things become a case of, in some sense, they are speculative, and our empirical findings can't tell us one way or the other which is true. I'd rather be in that position than just say, well, I'm going to accept this simplistic explanation because at least it gets me to unity. That's what you do, Trey.
You're just contradicting yourself. You're saying you don't search for unity.
No, I'm not.
You're going to keep on. And if you found out that M3 theory and string theory or whatever, all these ideas again, do you just leave them alone, or do you continue to work on them?
As I have said, Trey, I will try to find a better explanation, but I'm not going to aim for one singular, all-encompassing explanation.
If you could find one singular, all-encompassing explanation, would you like that?
I don't know, because I don't know what it would look like. So how am I supposed to know?
Talk about suppressing what, because you just want to. I really think you really believe this, but I don't see.
What am I suppressing? What am I suppressing? What am I suppressing?
You're saying you will not search for unity, and then you say, "I want to find a unified."
Well, that's not what I said. I never said I will not search for unity. I will try to get the best explanation. Okay.
So you want.
If there's a singular explanation, great. If reality is such that it doesn't throw up more than one explanation, Trey, or it shows that the explanation that I think I have as a working hypothesis isn't correct, then that's just tough luck. And if we're being honest, what often happens is we set out to try to affirm one particular theory or point of view, say in philosophy. I don't know, take any field like the philosophy of mind. Well, we've started from, say, something like substance dualism, and then we've gone to idealism, and then we've gone to transcendental idealism, and then we've gone through to behavioralism and identity theory and functionalism and all of the rest of that to try to get some good explanation. And what we've seen a fragmentation of our understanding, and if we're being intellectually honest, we have to accept that that's often what happens. So whilst we continue to try to put forward one theory or the other, or test, stress test a particular idea or a notion in philosophy, which is what happens, we have to accept that there may not be something in reality that's going to settle it one way or the other, or there could be something in reality that could settle it one way or the other, but we might not have access to it. We might not be able to get that confirmation. So accepting that doesn't mean that I then give up, or that I wouldn't like a unified position, because as I've said, and if you've misunderstood what I have said in the course of the discussion, then I would apologise, but I don't not want explanations or answers. But I am well aware that there are certain areas which I don't know a great deal about, and sometimes articulating my ignorance on them is beneficial in and of itself. So
that you can fix it, right?
what do you mean, fix my ignorance?
Your ignorance represents diversity, and
No, come on, Trey, stop forcing it into this tired-out old dichotomy. Try and think outside of these buzzwords of unity and diversity. You can't do it, can you? Because they are. You assume, right, okay, it's either completely fatuous and trivial to say that the endeavour of human thinking is to find explanations, right? Explanations. That's a plural term. It isn't an explanation, right? Because you could do, if that was your goal, then you could have one explanation. Everything's caused by flying spaghetti monster. What are you talking about? An explanation about its nature? Does an explanation have a nature? What kind of
listen to this.
Does it have?
An explanation on handles of this, and you begin to search it out. Yes, there may be other explanations for different things, but I'm trying to seek out the diversity of ideas to make a coherence out of that particular thing. That's what an explanation is.
No, Trey. Again, this is waffle. Okay. You want to find the best explanation you can for a phenomenon. That's fine.
So do you.
Okay?
So do you.
Yeah, and that's true. I do.
Okay.
I do. But that isn't me saying there has to be some kind of grand overarching meta-narrative that ties everything together. Because
if there is one, would you like it?
If there is one, then that would completely depend upon the content of the meta-narrative, wouldn't it?
No, it would be. I'm saying true. A true meta-narrative. Would that be a good thing?
But
what is M theory all about? It's a theory for everything, is it not?
So if the meta-narrative was that there was some kind of evil demon that wanted to torture me after I died, and that was the true explanation, would I like that? Then no, I wouldn't. Obviously. So it completely depends on the content of this meta-narrative that you haven't actually presented, Trey, anywhere.
Oh my goodness.
So you waffle on about a meta-narrative, but what do you actually mean by it? I understand the formal structure of a meta-narrative, but what is the content of the meta-narrative?
Well, the content, again, is going to go back to an ontological and a logical necessity of my argument.
Tell me what is the meta-narrative, right? A narrative implies you can communicate it like a story, right? So if I say the meta-narrative of the Star Wars films is, some savior complex or whatever it is, okay? I can say that, I can communicate that in plain English. Mm-hmm. So stop going back to buzzwords, and if you insist there is a meta-narrative, mm-hmm. right? I'm going to ask you what it is, and then B, I'm going to ask you for evidence for it, right?
Okay.
So A, what is the meta-narrative?
Okay, the meta-narrative is that existence is special. Do you agree with that?
Existence is special.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is to things that exist, yeah.
Okay. Now,
that's a completely trivial thing to say.
Now, give me a reason for it.
Because I exist.
You've agreed to the conclusion. Now I want to hear your framework for it.
Because I, as an existing thing, find existing valuable.
That's the conclusion. How did you get there?
Because I just said because I'm an existing thing. So do you not? No, Trey, listen, right? Do you find it odd that why do carnivores like eating meat? Because they're carnivores, right? It's the nature of a carnivore to want to eat meat and like eating meat. The nature of an existing thing to find the fact that it exists special and interesting. And we've been explained to this before many times, why evolution would lead to creatures that actually value their existence as being more likely to pass on their genes and survive, and therefore to become the way that life happens and exists. Okay,
you just committed the fallacy of reification there.
I didn't. In what sense did I commit a fallacy of reification?
Evolution is not a person. Evolution doesn't value anything.
Evolution doesn't. Trey, I'm not talking about valuing it. I'm talking about it selecting for things that do value.
Right, but it is toward a purpose of existence, right?
It is what, sorry?
Evolution is weeding out those traits that do not produce existence for the goal of existence, right?
Well, evolution is. Do you know what evolution is, Trey?
Yes, I do.
Can you give us a quick definition, please?
Change.
Change Just change.
Yeah, the diversity of life on Earth is the outcome of evolution, an impersonal and unguided force that employs natural selection, historical contingencies. Anyway, it's a mutational change, and it's adaptation through natural selection.
Right. I'm going to have to go, Trey, because like I said, I've gone a little bit over. We could pick this up at this point possibly tomorrow. So I can't make any promises, but I'll try. Okay.
Okay, and I'm not sure I can either, but
right.
We'll do it anyway. Thanks for your time, though. I appreciate it.
So that's fine. Take care.
Okay, man. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.